So the other day we had a brilliant video, in my opinion, given to us by the devs, talking with the community council about a couple of really big things that are just around the corner for Wrath Classic. Those being Ulduar, which everyone is very, very, very excited about. Date not released yet, but we all know it's sometime pretty fucking soon. And then we've also got this new concept, which was hinted at a couple of months ago, and we were given far more details on it. The brand new dungeon difficulty coming to us, which people, you know, aptly and maybe crudely termed as Heroic Plus back then, but now we've gotten the actual name because I think they wanted to disassociate themselves from the concept of Mythic Plus, being like, ew, retail, and they've called it Titan Rune Dungeons. I think that's right. I hope I'm getting that right. Is that right? Titan Rune?
Yeah, that's right.
Beautiful. Excellent.
Yeah.
And that wonderful, sexy voice is one of the three guests that I've got joining me today to break all of this down. We're going to give you a play-by-play breakdown of all the information we got and the performances of the individuals on that call, some of whom might be listening right now as we record. Duranosaur, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm a little under the weather, but I did not want to miss this because there's a lot that we got from that community council video that I think is very exciting and is going to be fun to chat about.
Mate, I'm very glad to have you here. I have to give you one little bit of a boost, hopefully, that'll help you shake off the malaise of the illness that you're going through right now. And that is this community council chat. I don't know if I won't go into too much detail, but like I'm trying to work something out with Blizzard to get them back on the podcast, right, in the near future, talking with me, hanging out with a few of us and just discussing some of the issues. There was an opportunity for the call that you heard with the community council to have actually been a Countdown to Classic call, but I think they opted at the end to actually do it with the community council, which is all good. I'll get my chance again in the future. But when we were talking about potentially doing it with a few of the Countdown listeners, Joanna, your name was specifically invoked as a request to be on that chat. So you are very well regarded amongst the devs, I believe, my friend.
Well, I'm blushing, and I'm very appreciative of that. I think one of the coolest things lately has just been the fact that the Classic WoW devs have heard some of my feedback and they've, sort of given me a thumbs up on it. That's been like probably the coolest thing with anything I've done content related in the past couple of years. So if it does ever happen, 100% I will be here.
Personally, I think it's mustache bias, but what do I know?
Well, you had one, so
true.
That is what it is.
Mine comes and goes. It's seasonal. Let's get to the other people on the call. As we joked about just before we started recording, it's been far, far, far too long since I've talked to this person. All of 36 hours. Look, you're going to hear him doubling up and pulling double duty on this episode because he was so good with that Rhett Paladin conversation that we just had the other day. Rouge, mate, how are you?
Very good, Josh. Thanks for inviting me again in such a short span of time. I appreciate it. Mate. And I'll just say that the community council call was great. And actually, I think, a Countdown to Classic is sort of a community council of people who actually play the game. So I think it would have been really nice if Blizzard took that approach and format of this.
We're the community cabal. That's what
maybe.
Yeah. Mate, very good to have you here. Obviously, you get invited back because I love having you on. I think you're so brilliant on this show. And let's get to our final guest. I do invite people back that I really, really enjoy hearing from. And this guy has sort of been the rookie of the year in a way. Very, very happy that the two occasions he's been on the show in the past. Let's get him for a trifecta of appearances now. Lord Narge, mate, how are you?
I'm great, Josh. Thanks for the invite again. Definitely rookie of the year, I guess. But I really enjoy that you always seem to get me on the topics that I really want to talk about. So I'm really excited to discuss this Ulduar talk because it was my favorite raid all time. It still is my favorite raid all time. So I'm I'm personally very happy with a lot of the stuff that was said. So can't wait to get through it.
Very good, very good. We'll somewhat separate this. I want to do a different Ulduar call later on, just before it comes out, really breaking down the raid boss by boss. This won't necessarily be that chat, but I do want to really hone in on the stuff that Tim said about some of the funky mechanics and stuff, and his work on really tuning this thing right for this crowd, which I think will be a really interesting topic. But guys, let's dive right into it. Rouge, I want to start with something very general that you alluded to in your opening hello there, which is the fact that we got this conversation at all from Blizzard and the nature of the content that they delivered to us in this moment. Look, there's two things that I want to zero in on here. The first point, and I want to hear from all of you guys on both of these things, but the first point is this is exactly the kind of engagement that I personally and so many other people in the community have been fucking begging for, 3 years plus more, like even pre-Classic. I vividly remember multiple times on my show tearing my hair out, screaming at the Classic team to show face, humanize yourselves, show us your players, talk the talk with us, walk the walk with us. We want to love you, bring us in, hold us, hug us, brush our hair and tell us everything is going to be okay. And for so long, we got that distancing, which unfortunately Blizzard for a long time is quite self-aware of the fact that they were doing it, and whether or not internally some people were on board with it or not, that's just the way it was. And I understand why it has been that way for so long. I get it. They're a fucking big company. The risk versus reward is not worth it for them. If someone says the wrong thing, if a streamer goes rogue and says something fucking stupid that hurts them and their product, it ain't worth it. I get that. However, in a semi-controlled environment like this, where they're not putting the guests on leashes, so to speak, but they trust the people, they know the people, they can hang out and be nerds and talk about the fun stuff, you can already see the comments flowing in from the community about, hey, Joanna's already said it. This Tim guy, who the fuck is he? He's fucking awesome. He sounds great. Let's get more of him. Hey, Chris sounds really fun. Hey, Agren, great facial hair, mate. We fucking love you. It's all... It brings the Classic team into us, and there's only, I think there's so many net positives that can be derived from that. My second point on this is that it also shows to me that the Classic team members they have fronted onto us via this video, they clearly fucking get it. Look, whether you agree on it, and I know this is, a bit of a Blizzard ringhole sucking, the likes of which you're not used to hearing on Countdown to Classic. But as I always say, my mantra is you have to give credit where credit is due. Otherwise, none of this is worth anything. These guys clearly get it. Whether you agree with their decisions or not, they are fucking clearly part of our crowd. It is so evident from everything they say. Not only do they play the game, they're playing at the same fucking level as all you sweaters and min-maxers out there. We didn't have that impression before from the non-contact or the very light contact that we were getting. I'm not going to... I know the Classic team, obviously, they love everyone they work with. I'm not going to sit here and throw shade individually at some things in the past, but I will give the example of sometimes when they're talking Classic on those, and I know it's not a favorite of everyone's, but those super pre-canned chats that we get, on the online BlizzCon announcements of the guys, the three guys and the girls sitting around the table talking about what's to come in Classic. It is so overproduced and weird, unnatural conversation that it still creates a disconnect and a bit of a disassociation between wait, these guys are making the game? What's going on here? This community council chat is exactly what we needed to kind of balance that out. Anyway, that's my spewing forth of all that. Guys, please, first in, best dressed, having heard everything I just said there, agree, disagree, what do you think?
a lot of the love songs have something along the lines, where have you been all of my life, right? So I'm just going to say it. Where have you been with this format of, giving us information? What are your thoughts? Where are you heading? Showing your desire for the game. I absolutely loved it. All three guys are passionate about what they're doing, even though there might be things that I do not agree with them. But I actually, now understand, where they're coming from, what they're trying to do, and really think that there is a phase behind the decisions, and that was perfect. So I think they need to keep doing that.
I think also one of the coolest moments from the day that chat came out, I was watching Jordy, who's a classic Rust streamer, and he was watching the community council video on his stream, was in like pausing it, talking with his chat about it. And at one point, it was going through a segment where Tim was talking about his ideas for Ulduar and making it more challenging. And all we knew was his, I think, first name. And I was like, yo, I'm going to find this guy. So I go into my Twitter and I start looking up, Tim Blizzard, and I find his Twitter and I post a link to Tim Jones's Twitter in Jordy's chat. And he's like, there he is, everybody, go follow him. And then, 20 seconds later in the Twitch chat, Tim Jones is like, oh, that's me. And
I saw that. I was there. It was awesome.
It's just like, to me, that was a very important moment, because that means they're not just doing these chats and becoming more open about, talking through their process in like a video format or with community council or maybe on Countdown at someday. A lot of them are in streams watching us play and watching us talk about the game, not just, doing things, in off on an island or whatever. Like they are paying attention to all different kinds of people who are participating. And I think that was almost as important as the community council interview was itself.
Yeah, I caught that moment. I caught a clip from Geordie's stream and definitely, saw him, as you were saying as well, Joanna, absolutely fawning over Tim. And, I don't want to make it out like Tim was the only rock star. Chris and Agrend were phenomenal as well. And trust me, we'll get to everyone on that call soon. But it was a really cool moment to see Geordie sort of go through that. But, as I also say, Joanna, like Tim has been... Agrend and Tim have been listening to your voice on Countdown for some time. Agrend put Tim onto the show quite some time ago, so like he's familiar with this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's to your point when you were introducing this topic. It's having them, be more out there, be more accessible, having regular players know who they are and get a sense of what they are doing with the game, what they enjoy with the game. Like, even like, are they playing it? Are they raiding? Are they PvPing? Those things I think go so far in terms of connecting the WoW Classic community and having them feel like the game is being made for them by people who want it to be good.
Hey, Lord Narge, what did you think of this along the lines of what everyone's saying, in contrast to what it was like, what I now call back in the day, where like, I vividly remember before Classic came out, I think it was radio silence post Classic announcement up until about 3 months before the game came out. We didn't get any engagement from the fucking devs on it, which is like, it sucked, and I called them out a lot on it, but like partial understanding because the game hadn't been released yet. But then after release, it was still just like wandering through the desert. We was absolutely, dying of thirst. And it seems like it wasn't until almost like a third of the way through TBC where I wouldn't say the floodgates opened, but the gate cracked open a little bit and we got a little bit more communication. Like that time versus this, it is really night and day, isn't it?
It's night and day, and anecdotally listening to Rouge and Duranosaur talk about it, I agree with everything they say, and something that's really simple is that for months now, I mean, when the queues hit, when the whole mega server thing hit, like you said, when Classic was coming, the complaints are always the same, right? The complaints are always down to it. Communication is always going to be a complaint that is there no matter what. They're running a huge community. They're making a huge game. They're making changes, right? So every single time anything happens, there's going to be people who like the things, people who don't like the things. That's always going to be a factor that matter. But what's important is that you're communicative and open about why you're doing it, and you're engaging the user. Because earlier in this talk, Rouge just said himself that he might not have agreed with some of the things that were said, but he was really happy to see the engagement and to hear it. So I think that's what's really important, is that so long as they're communicating and they're kind of out there and engaging with us, you feel like we're being heard and listened to, and you know that even if things might not be going the way you want them to, you know that they're trying to make it the best it can be, and at least they're trying to defend it, or rationalize it or whatever. And then it's a dialogue, as opposed to once every couple of months something breaks or something happens that's terrible, and the whole community is pissed off and nothing really gets done about it until way later with zero communication. And that in business, in personal life, in every facet, is just never the way to handle things. You really just have to be communicative and open. And I think, like you said, night and day. The talk was great. What you were discussing was great. And I think most people, once again, even if they don't necessarily agree with some of the things, the way they're going in the game, they were definitely happy that at least it was a discussion. So I think it was super important, and I'm really happy about it.
Very well said, mate. Look, let's dive into the first of the two meaty topics, guys, and that is Titan Rune Dungeons. We got the bulk of this information from Chris. This seems to have somewhat been his baby. I hope, Tim, I'm not misrepresenting that. I want to make sure that I get this right, that Chris did a bunch of the work on Titan Rune Dungeons. That's the impression that I had gotten. Obviously, all the classic team puts in on it, I've no doubt. However, it's funny, I always joke that Chris was the mystery member of the team that we were trying to work out for so long who he was. And, I had talks with, Kevin Jordan about guesses as to who it might be. And our guesses were wrong, and it was Chris. And Chris has been great, from everything we've got from him. Hearing him go through the specifics of the Titan Rune Dungeons, it seems that they have really had a good think about this, and we'll go over the data and sort of what might be coming our way. I did enjoy, though, the Hawaiian beach background that Chris had running during this chat. I was almost waiting for the Simpsons moment with like the guy in the background with the steel drum and, hey, you get that steel drum out of the Blizzard office. But, we didn't get that. That's all right. Let me open this one up again to the floor. 100% more health for mobs in Titan Rune Dungeons, 30% more damage. And we're getting some specific themed wrinkles coming in, such as like a zombie plague in Culling of Stratholme, some funky troll stuff with standing in certain spots and health regeneration. And they're trying to make every dungeon have a bit of a flavor or an ongoing theme. Now, there'll be many, many questions about this. Let's start with you, Joanna. When we talk about, specific figures and tuning, how do you feel about the difficulty that's being delivered to us? Because we have to ask the question of, who is this for? What crowd, what market are we catering to? And obviously we highlight things like alts and casuals, but also, what kind of challenge do we really want to present to players? Do we want to go ridiculously hard? Do we want to go just a little hard? It's the Goldilocks effect here of, this one's fucking just right. How did you feel about those figures that we got?
Yeah, so I did a handful of them on the PTR. I think I did 4 or 5 of the new Titan Rune Dungeons on there. And it's very noticeable that the health pools are way higher on trash and on bosses. Like, fights last forever. The damage is a bit noticeable. We definitely had moments where we would accidentally pull 2 packs and the tank would just get hit, by 4 or 5 mobs all at once and just die. But we were in pre-raid gear, right? And not even pre-raid BIS gear. It was sort of a combination of, I think, normal and heroic gear. And at that gear level, we definitely had a sense that we can't just like chain pull, or we can't grab a ton of trash packs and just AoE them down like we would on our mains. But it was hard to know whether that was because of the bad gear that we were in, or if it's because of the buffs to the dungeons. So I think to your first point, like the difficulty level, who were these for? because the rewards that we're getting are Nax 10 raid loot and, you know, Eye of Eternity raid loot and Obsidian Sanctum, it's all 10-man loot. They're not meant to be geared towards people that are in full 25-man raid gear, because that just, why would you tune a raid or a dungeon for that when the reward is gear that's worse than that? So I think that the tuning part is probably not far off of where it needs to be for it to be a challenge in, you know, dungeon, heroic, maybe some 10-man raid gear. The big feedback that I had was to, I don't know, maybe adjust the health pools, because there are a lot of times when you're killing trash where you're just sitting there and you're going through your rotation and it feels like you're in a boss fight, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm coming up on like the 4th rotation of my spell casts type of thing. And I don't know if that's fun and engaging to just be like, oh, we're stuck on this trash pack for, instead of being able to kill it in, you know, 12 seconds, now we're stuck here for like 45 seconds. So I'm not sure about that piece of it. But what I do think would be really interesting, because you alluded to these empowerments that are in the dungeons, like you talked about the one in Culling of Stratholme where people randomly turn into zombies and things like that. I think that if those things are all built to like build on one another, so that if you do chain pull packs, if you do increase the speed at which you do the dungeon, those things become more and more of a detriment, then you can create different incentives for geared groups of players to go into these dungeons. And maybe you just put in like cosmetic rewards or mounts or something, and you put in like these time caps the time caps are meant to be for those like fully 25-man decked out raid geared characters to try to hit. While the loot is still something that's meant to be, you know, for players that are just coming up on an alt or on a new character, whatever it may be. Sorry, I know I'm spewing a ton of stuff.
No, you're killing it, mate. I'll just get you to finish up with one last thing. You were really, really good in as I frequently describe as some of the wanky private discords that we're in between content creators and devs and whatnot. You were really good with providing some excellent feedback on early PTR testing on these things already. One comment that I read, like I feel bad because I don't write in these discords. I just lurk in the corner and read. I don't really like to get involved. But I do read everything you say. And I enjoyed the part you were talking about where you're like, the CC issue, like where do we really want to sit with these things? Like, do we want to revive or you know, put the paddles on crowd control and kind of, you know, resuscitate it and bring it back into the game? Or do we want to leave it be and kind of have it more feel like Wrath, where we don't really do that anymore? What were your lamentations about CC in early testing?
Yeah, I think this kind of comes down to one of my initial reactions was that even these Titan Rune dungeons, which are harder than our heroic dungeons, are still easier than TBC heroics were when we like pre-nerf TBC heroics, which are the ones that we got like when we first initially hit 70 when TBC came out. These Titan Rune dungeons are easier, and the way that we like that became super clear super fast was because we went into these testing them on the PTR. And we even asked, and within our party, we were like, oh, should we worry about CCing? And we're like, let's just give a few packs a try. And what we found was that as long as we didn't accidentally pull extra trash, there was no reason for us to CC. And I think that becomes a really interesting topic, because from a design perspective, I think Wrath is thought of as being like the entire expansion is just pull more, do more AoE,
CC is
burn
for
it all down.
yeah,
like no one is polymorphing in dungeons or even, you know, in raids or whatever. No one is sapping. No one is dropping freezing traps. It's non-existent, but it's because I think from a design perspective, it's meant to be like a push through, go fast. Trash is just stuff you do between bosses, and then on bosses, theoretically, you would do mechanics and things. So I think it would be more fun if these Titan Rune dungeons did require some thought and some CC mechanics on like larger trash packs. But it'd be so counter to the rest of the way that Wrath is played that I feel like players would revolt against it. And so I don't know. I could kind of see it going either way. I could see people being excited at that challenge, and I could see people they just want to go in and they just want to get it done. They just want to get their bonus loot, their 10-man raid loot, instead of having to actually go and do the 10-man raids. And so finding that fine line of, okay, what's fun and challenging, but what's also not going to deter players from even going in there.
Too easy. Hey, I've torn between asking you guys a specific question next, or just letting you comment on what Tyrannosaur has said. Let me go with the latter. Open it up. Lord Narge, Rouge, first in best dressed. Everything you just heard, that brilliant stanza from Tyranna. Thoughts, comments?
I was actually watching some of the runs that Dura was doing with Sarth and who's the other guys. Well, the group pretty much. I saw part of that, and I think what Duranosaur is actually very true. It is a great content, and presenting a bit of challenge, maybe not too much, but really, who is it aimed for? It's people who are, equipping alts, or who are rerolling, or who are new at this point to the game. But to the majority of the player base who are doing 25-minute content, there is very little to do. You will do it once to get the experience under the belt, to get the possible achievements that are there, and you will be done with it. There is no further incentive as like maybe a ladder, how fast you can do it, or to get some 25-man loot if you do it under a certain time, like you had in Shattered Halls, for example. Even though the timers were very lenient to the performance of current player base, but what is the thing that will make you do it for the second time? So I think that's like the main issue for me is it's nice, but maybe it's not enough for continuous doing of Heroic Plus or whatever the name will really be for majority of the player base. So I would say it's a great effort, and I really loved, the way they said, well, we did 50% plus extra damage, but that was too much for the green gear players, so we tuned it down to 30. But then again, what's the challenge for people who have the gear and who will be entering the dungeon with said gear?
I love that you dived in on that, and Lord Narge, I'll throw it over to you now, mate, and I'll just inject the following sort of added commentary on what Rouge has said. The first question I wrote down in relation to Titan Rune Dungeons was just these words: who is this for? Now, I don't want to sound bitchy when I say that, because I share your sentiment, Rouge. I'm really happy and really excited that this extra development has gone into the game. This is, as I say, something that we've been screaming for and craving, is some effort and some ingenuity and a bit of innovation with Wrath Classic, and we've got it. So I'm very, very excited and tantalized by the concept of this dungeon and this new difficulty. But it was a very sobering moment when, about 3 seconds after that excitement faded, I sort of said to myself, I wonder if I'm even going to run this content, though, because I'm fortunate enough now to, I am a regular raider now. I have very early got almost full bis on my character. Like, I'm kicking ass and taking names, and it's fantastic. And so then I asked myself the question again, oh, well, that's fine. Not all content has to be for me. But then again, I countered myself with, but I've said this on the show for a long time, I truly feel, without any quantitative data, that the majority of the player base, as you said as well, Rouge, is like me. That maybe, I don't know, 60, 65% of the player base, whatever it fucking might be, arbitrary figure, throw it out there, is a hardcore player that has all the fucking gear. So if you're designing this for alts and casuals, they are really the minority. So wouldn't you want something that kind of throws the net over everyone and goes, hey, fuck, guys, everyone's going to have fun here? And the way to do that is obviously via the reward. And at this stage, I'm not sure that the rewards that have kind of been talked about are really enough to bring us in, but obviously things can always change. So, Lord Narge, how do you feel about the carrot at the end of the stick there for Titan Rune Dungeons? And given Blizzard has not exactly hit the nail on the head with rewards for players in dungeons, I'm talking about like the Northrend Adventurer box or whatever that you get as a tank or a healer. They've been falling extremely flat. What do you think could be done to suck us all in?
You know what? I disagree a little bit in the sense that in this case that not enough is done, and I'll tell you why. Your big question for who this is for, and obviously my opinion here is that it's for everyone. And let me explain why that's the case. First off, I'm pretty sure you have to activate the Titan rune, right, to make it a
That's
Titan
right. Yeah,
rune dungeon,
all
right?
5 people. Yep.
So exactly. So right off the bat, anyone who doesn't want to do it and who wants to just, kind of dick around and do their 10-minute super dungeon super quickly for the money and the token that they're gonna get, great, right? So cool. Let's wipe them off the face now. Anyone who's opting into the dungeon is not that person, right? But everyone else, and that's a big category of people, of course, that spans a lot of different types of people. But I'll tell you why I say it's for everyone. It's because ultimately, Josh, it is for people like me who are pretty hardcore and who put up high numbers and go for kind of the best because I need that extra token at the end, right? So if I'm doing this every day and I'm getting an extra token at the end, that means that I'm getting those tokens double as fast as someone who isn't doing that. And I have no choice. And any what I'll call serious raider has no choice but to do this every day until, of course, they get their tier pieces or whatever may be the reward from those tokens from raid. But you remember how important Valor tokens were. That's how, if you weren't lucky with your whatever it was, shoulder and pants or chest and pants or whatever it was, you had to get it from Valor tokens. So you had to do your daily to get that. And Titan Rune Dungeons offer an extra one at the end. So for the hardcore players, I mean, whether they like it or not is going to be a different story. But in terms of who needs to do it, everyone. Because if you're bored and you want a little bit more of a challenge, you're going to do it. And if you're a hardcore raider or even just a normal raider that goes to raid every week, you're going to do it for the extra tokens. The gear itself is whatever.
To push you a little bit, mate, though, are you talking about like your main or your alt?
I'm talking my main here. For my alt, but alt as well, because anything you do for your main, realistically, I mean, if your alt is like a gathering or farming alt, maybe not. But if your alt is someone that you actually play on, I don't know why you wouldn't do something a little bit more challenging to get the extra reward at the end. And if you're not rating that much on your alt, then it's doubly as important because you're going to be getting gear from these tokens even more so because you're not getting them from raid as often. And then back to Duranosaur, I think I'll agree with him in terms of the difficulty and the scaling. I mean, listen, we've all ran the dungeons a lot of times. I'm personally in very good gear. I run with guildies who are also in good gear, and we literally just run through the whole dungeon, right, and just like destroy everything. And it's not fun. I don't do dungeons anymore. Like right now, there's nothing I need from tokens, and there's no reason for me to do dungeons, so I just don't do them. When this comes out, I'm pretty excited to see what the difference will be, but I will agree that the health tweak didn't need to be 100, 150% or whatever it is, because that's just a little bit of a waste of time. Like if you're in good gear and you know what you're doing, a mob taking triple as long to kill isn't going to change the outcome of the fight. It's just going to make you blow, your rotation or your cooldowns twice per fight instead of once per fight. So I kind of agree with Tyrannosaur there. I like the damage increases. I like the health increases. I just don't like that the health is like doubled or even more because it's silly. If you're gonna, if you're not gonna know how to do it, you're not gonna know how to do it. And taking way longer to kill the mob, I don't think is gonna really move the needle. But it hitting harder will. So, I don't think it's the greatest thing in the world, but I'm pretty happy with it. I'm not unhappy with it, and I think it's an overall positive. And I think the extra token at the end, at least for the first, let's call it 2-3 months, is going to be a big deal. That is a big reward. But then ultimately, of course, like anything else, in a couple months when, like you said, you're almost in full bis and you're not like a super serious raider, but you have gotten into raiding more. But now you're in a point where you don't need tokens, and we're all going to get there. But for the first couple months, to me, that's a more than good enough reward.
Well, if I can, sorry, 1 second, Rouge, I want to jump in and then we'll throw it to you, mate. I just want to push you just a little bit more, Lord Narj.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I fucking love you, mate. I'm not trying to do like the cunty shove back or anything like that.
Go ahead.
I love hearing from you. But on that fucking token point, that's something I want to dive in on just a little bit more because I'm intrigued to hear you say that your main might be a little short of a few tokens or whatnot. If you've got to share it with other classes and whatnot, you might have not had some unlucky drops or whatever. And I know my experience is not indicative of everyone else's, but I'm sure there must be other people out there. I'm at the stage on my shaman where like I've got all my tokens, I've got my full like almost my full offset of tokens as well. I think I've even got 1 or 2 Ellie, like my 3rd spec tokens. Like, it is raining tokens from the fucking sky. And so that's why I was like, the reward from Titan Rune dungeons, yes, it's great for alts and whatnot to rain tokens for them. But for the hard, like I said, the majority of the community that I believe like are hardcore raiders, the tokens, in my opinion, might mean less because everyone's talking about the loot pinata that Nax is en masse already. And I was thinking more like that's where you need to talk about wild, not wilds, but, you know, other forms of rewards from these Titan Rune dungeons, you know, whether you beat something in a certain time or whatever, whether it's, you know, everyone says mount drops, things like that. I even went as crazy as, and people will fucking lose their minds, but I'm just throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks. I was like, fuck, do you put in a 2% chance for a fucking heirloom to drop? I don't know. Something that gets these players in there. But to highlight the tokens, I'm sort of like, do you really think a bunch of people will want them?
So 2 things. One, and I guess as a vocabulary thing, there's the tokens that you physically turn in for gear that you get from raid, and then there's the emblems. I was talking emblems, so that's on me. So the extra emblem that you get at the end ultimately helps you by tier. Like you said, it's a loot pinata in Nax. Everyone's getting all their tier very quickly, right? I personally definitely bought at least 1 or 2 at least 2 pieces of Valor gear, right? And I get gear pretty quickly, and we clear Nax day 1 very quickly, etc. So assuming that the average guild is a little slower than ours, which is a true assumption actually, because, you know, we have Warcraft logs, then your main is gonna need to get emblems, at least for 1 or 2 pieces of gear, maybe more. So, and if you're at that top end of the spectrum, you need gear as quick as possible because you're trying to get into hard modes as quick as possible. Now, you're totally right. That's not going to be relevant after, I don't know, like 2 months of raiding, because you'll probably have those pieces, especially since tier has been what it's been. But I personally think that for those who really want that extra token, it is a worthwhile pursuit, or emblem. Sorry, it's a worthwhile pursuit. But like you said, it would have been cool because I'm seeing that achievements are very popular again. I was personally very surprised to see that. A lot of us played this game a long time ago, and a lot of us maybe don't want to redo all those things. But there's a lot of people in my guild who are really going after it, so I think it would have been cool. I agree to add something like Culling of Stratholme, but obviously more difficult because, like, I don't think I've ever been in a culling run that didn't get the mount. Where there is a mount at the end or some kind of reward at the end that means that you not only executed well, but you executed fast and clean enough to get that kind of reward. So Josh, I would agree with that. I'm totally not against that. If they want to make it even more difficult or just take it a bit further so that there's something to strive towards outside of raid, I would be totally for that. But I do think that the emblems, the extra emblem at the end of the day is slept on. That's kind of a big deal. I mean, emblems of valor were a big deal.
I see your point, and sorry, there was a bit of a lost in translation moment there.
That was my fault.
But even hearing you clarify there, I'll move on to Rouge, but I will say, mate, I very respectfully will agree to disagree because I am swimming in emblems and I don't even do heroic dungeons. Just from weekly rating, I'm that meme of like, I don't know what to do with all these things. Like, but I do still see your point.
It's been a long time though.
Sorry?
It's been a long time. We've been in X a long time.
I hear you. I do hear you. Rouge, I'm so sorry I cut you off before, mate. Go for it. What were you going to say?
Oh, no worries. I think it's important to really say out loud that the emblems of conquest, that will be the current emblem when Ulduar comes, will only drop from the daily heroic. Now, if you do the heroic plus, you will get 3 additional emblems. So I agree with Lord Naj that this is very nice, but it will pretty much limit you to 1 heroic plus a day that you will be interested in, and you will just not do the others because there's no reason to do it, right? You only get the current emblems in 1 out of 12 or how many there are in a day, and that's what you might do, and you are done with it. Because even next 10 and 25, they will actually keep dropping Valor, but you will not need Valor at that point anymore.
All right, very good.
So you'll need the new emblem. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Too easy. Durana, you've heard fucking feverish back and forth there. Any thoughts from you on this one? And also, mate, if I can expand a little bit, I've thrown the tidbit out there. like, fuck, if we put our heads together, realistically, if we want to make this dungeon sexy, if we want to throw a bit more leg out there for the classic crowd, I made the outrageous suggestion of maybe a small chance at an heirloom to drop or something like that. What kind of other shit can we throw against the wall? Like, the mount is the easy answer. What else can we fucking do? What are you thinking?
So I've been hammering home that, like, there needs to be like an incentive for people to do these dungeons faster, and there needs to be like a building difficulty. Like, the more mobs you pull, the like harsher it becomes, more so than just like you're dealing with more mobs, right? Like, all of those different empowerments should be exponential. The more mobs you pull, the more of that mechanic you're dealing with. And if they essentially got these dungeons to the place that they wanted to have them, and let's say they release them on live when Ulduar comes out, give it like 2 weeks, and take Warcraft Logs tracks dungeon speed times. They do. Take the fastest time for every single one of those dungeons and just set that as the benchmark and say, all right, from here on out, if you and your group go in and you beat this time, you will either get an achievement, or you'll have a chance at getting like a Perky the Pug, or you'll get a mount drop, or maybe if you get all of the dungeons done under those time frames, you get an achievement, and that achievement gives you some kind of mount, right? Like, I think that if you do something like that and you add in an in-game timer that tells you that, like, let's say everyone channels their thing to start this Titan Rune dungeon. Once it's been channeled, like a fake wall comes up, similar to Mythic Plus. A 10-second timer starts. As soon as it goes down, like an in-game timer is up, and it's just tracking your time. Whether you care about going faster or not, that automatically adds an incentive for anyone who goes into these dungeons to maybe push it a little bit faster, to maybe see how far you can go. And then maybe, you think your group did a pretty good job, so then you start looking and asking how other people have done. And I think that just the timer alone builds some competition and and like a fun incentive to do these dungeons. And I don't think you have to add any particular loot or anything that substantially improves your power level or anything like that. I think you can just use cosmetics, just use pets, just use mounts, just use achievements, and that can be what gets people to run these on their normal characters, in addition to all the people that are trying to run them on, alts or rerolls or what have you.
I think there's I totally agree, Dinos. By the way, I really think that having achievements that are tied to times is way better than the current achievements, because sometimes they are very counterintuitive in what you need to do. Like the Zombie Fest is in my opinion, totally stupid achievement to pursue. But I think this would be nice, and I think it needs to be by Blizzard. It cannot rely on a third party, right? So as soon as you enter a Heroic Plus dungeon, it says time to beat to get achievement is this, and best time on this server is that, so that you are somewhat challenged to go against that time and to improve and have some sort of incentive to really perform there.
Oh, absolutely. And to take that one step further, if there was an in-game leaderboard that just told you the fastest times, or even just like where your group is stacked up, it doesn't even, if it tracked all the times for all of these Titan Rune dungeons that were done on your server, suddenly it's like, hey, did you guys know that we got like number 9 on the server? Like let's try to go get, like a top 5 or a top 3 or number 1. Like it gives a reason for people to go in and do them.
Mythic Plus. Now we're Mythic Plus.
Guys, I just want to say about the rewards, extended this one a little bit. Like, I'm not trying to, like I say, I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on this too much. I'm kind of trying to do the constructive critique thing as well. I love the concept, but again, I'm just trying to expand it a little bit on and go make it a little bit sexier. But it's not like there's nothing I want in these dungeons, because you guys might have similar stories to me. I have had pretty bad luck in the 10-man dungeons, even though I said it's raining loot for me in 25-man and all my fucking loot dreams have come true. 10-mans have been a bit of a different story. So this does have some appeal to me when we talk about really high value items, things like, Surge Needle Ring, really stand out to me. And I think that one might have even been shouted out at some point. I'm not sure. But, to see that one, obviously the value is going to crash, but like I fucking need it. I haven't seen it. Other items like, on my enhanced shaman, I'm talking about obviously the blue aspect helm. I haven't seen the stray drop in Nax, giving myself more opportunities to pick up a few of those, just bad luck pieces is enticing. So that's great. There's not like zero value. I mean, sure, we're rating every week, and maybe by the time the next phase rolls around, it will have dropped for me. Who knows? But if it hasn't, it would be nice to get that extra chance. Do you guys hear what I'm saying? Do you have any bad luck on loot that you'd be looking for in 10-man items from these things?
I mean, I also have not gotten a stray yet on my enhancement shaman, and that's like, it's such an annoying one because it just drops off trash.
It kills me because Wowhead says it's like an 8% drop chance or something from some mobs, and I'm like, where the fuck is this thing?
Dude, I'm going through with pugs, and I'm just like, oops, stray earth shock. Whoops, pulled some extra trash. My bad. It's just every week I'm like, please, please, please. And then we get to Saf, and I'm like, I don't even care about Saf and KT. We ran out of trash. I'm sad now.
Exactly. Rouge, Lord Narge, how about you guys? Any 10-man items that you might be keeping an eye out for?
Not anymore, thankfully. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say I'm a red. Who cares about my loot anyway?
That's a good point. He's self-aware.
Maybe they'll drop a DPS, like just a flat item for a DPS buff, Rouge.
That's funny.
No. There's no bis loot for reds in 10-man content, so no, not missing anything.
No, I'm talking like it drops a world buff just for rets. Can only be used by rets.
Oh, that would be actually a kind of a fun thing to do, right? If you beat a timer, you get a buff for raid, and you log out for the rest of the week.
Oh no! What have we done? What have we just done, Lord Narge?
Yes.
Fuck!
Yes.
What have I just inadvertently done? Oh, Lord Narge, sorry, mate. You were going to say something.
No worries. That's funny. No, I thankfully got lucky, like literally last week, actually, finally got my last piece from 10-man that I needed. But, I don't think the game was ever intended for everyone to be full piss, right, all the time, which is kind of what's happening now, right? So, Duran, I hope you get your loot, but also boo-hoo, right? Like, I'm sure you're in great loot right now, and it sucks that you're not going to get, or you might not get whatever it is you're looking for. But ultimately, this game wasn't made so that everyone would just be full bis. And I think a lot of people kind of lose the plot sometimes because we're so used to it's been years of classic now, right? That we've been playing, and we're all older. We all have 15 years worth of data and experience and min-maxing to just at our fingertips, right? So there's no more mystery in terms of like how to build things, how to spec, how to gear. And a lot of it's been done before. Some of it by everyone, or sorry, a lot of it by a lot of people, but some new players. But for the most part, we are now more powerful in every phase as a whole than ever before. And like what I mean by that is, when we went into like Sunwell Plateau, right, which was considerably more difficult than anything previous to that, I would say. I mean, only a handful of guilds every server, had Vash and KT on farm, right? I mean, so most guilds going to Sunwell Plateau was in totally okay gear, whereas nowadays everyone and their mother, I mean, you go pug Nax, right, and everyone's been clearing it since week 1, and everyone's just geared like crazy because we've just been clearing it day in and day out for months. And this is, wasn't necessarily the case back then. So that's why I think a lot of these changes were necessary. And now I'm kind of skipping ahead towards the Ulduar thing. But anyways, yeah. So, I don't think it was ever meant to be a game where everyone's in full bis, quickly or at all times. So as annoying as it can be to chase that one item, I think it's kind of a good thing that they haven't really touched that looting.
No, I agree with you. I've said in the past on the show, even I'm sitting here gloating about, fucking all the great gear I've got. Completely agree that I've torn apart the sense of entitlement amongst the crowd that, I should get every piece of full bis in every phase, bar none, blah, 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 blah. I agree that the game was not meant to be necessarily done that way for sure. Now, it's one other little point, very, very quick talking point as a result of this. The guys, Chris made a joke about this during the talk, but it is worth sort of mentioning. Abyss crystals, it's obviously going to have a great effect on the Abyss crystal market. They have been pretty fucking expensive to a point that it's caught, I don't know if it's caught people by surprise, but it's been very, very notable on how much it's going to set you back to get all those fucking Abyss crystals for your Berserker or what have you. Are you guys obviously probably going to be happy about a bit of relief coming to that market? Do you think it's going to destroy the market a little bit too much? Any deep thoughts on Abyss crystals?
I think Chris was maybe, exaggerating the impact of how many crystals there will be, because the thing is, people are min-maxing. If you are a hardcore raider or, in a sort of middle of the pack, you sort of go for the BIS professions, right? And that's jewel crafting and engineering for so many people. And I do run heroics still on my alts. And there's hardly enchanters in groups these days. So even though there will be, purple items dropping that could yield you a void crystal, I don't think there will be enchanters in those groups. So I don't think it will have that much of an impact as predicted.
I completely agree. It's not like I have enchanting on one of my characters, and I'm always the only enchanter when I do dungeons, right? I think that, most epic loot that drops, even in heroics off of the final bosses right now, I think that the vast majority of it is vendored because there's no enchanter in the group.
Yeah, I have the same experience. I'm an enchanter on my main, because it's not that far off BIS, and also because I'm kind of like the quote-unquote guild enchanter, so I didn't want to drop it because I, kind of was funneled recipes and mats. But I'm like the only enchanter in every group, so I definitely see that as well.
Yeah, Andrew still brings up a good point. A bit of a touche to me in Twitch chat. It's absolutely fair. Of course, what did you fucking expect, Josh? It's a new expansion. Epic disenchants are going to be expensive. Completely agree with you. Absolutely, completely agree with you. I mean, tell me if I'm way off base, guys. It's more so that it's not that I'm shocked that they were expensive. It's I'm shocked at sort of how expensive they were, given that the sheer amount of fucking loot that drops in Nax, like, it is out of control. I thought the market would be slightly more flooded and push the price down, but it was still sitting there really, really solid and steady for quite some time at a high price. So it's not that I'm shocked it's expensive. It's just how deep I'm actually reaching into my pocket at the end of the day. Were you guys sort of with me on that one? You're like, nah, Josh, it's normal. Don't worry about it.
I think it's been interesting because I think part of that is that most guilds, when they started doing 25-man raids, they weren't disenchanting stuff because almost all the loot in Nax is okay, which means that if you're looking for 5 or 6 different pieces, 5 or 6 different slots, like, your best piece may not have dropped, your second best may not have dropped, but hey, look, your third dropped. So yeah, I'll take that third one. So then for us anyway, like, we were not disenchanting very much at all until the last couple weeks, because so many people still didn't have their best piece that they were still picking up that second best, third best, whatever it may be. And then I think another thing that might be happening too is that with guilds being established the way that they are and having guild banks, like, when we disenchant stuff as a guild, we keep those shards and then you request them through the guild if you want to get an enchant on a BIS piece of gear, which means that those shards are never entering the market. So there isn't a surplus of supply there.
Fair enough. Well said. Go for it, mate.
I also think, a lot of people, as the Rhinosaur has said, they go for bis enchants on non-bis gear, right? So they will go berserking on the third bis dagger for rogues or whatever.
Not me.
And that's 10 void crystals there. You know, plus 10 all stats on chest is super expensive as well. So there are some like crazy costs for some of the enchants, and I think people go for that because they don't know when the bis gear will drop, so they will just go and enchant something that may not be bis. So there's this constant inflow and outflow of the mats in the market, keeping the price where it is.
And it was really a kind of a bit of a litmus test in a weird way with how prepared you were to spend that money on like a berserking enchant or something on a non-bis piece of gear. You know, I know a lot of people are swimming in gold in Wrath, and that's fine, but I think it's probably well accepted that the average player might only have between, you know, 3,000 to 10,000 gold or something. And I can tell you that throughout the whole of Wrath so far, I went into Wrath with like 11k gold or something. I've just been at 10k gold the whole fucking time. It dips down to 8.5, it climbs back up to 10.5, it goes down to 9, it goes to 11. Like, I'm basically just at 10 the whole time. So when these weapons dropped, you know, there were the third or fourth bis or what have you, and thankfully my guild it puts no pressure on us whatsoever to put the best enchants on something that's not a bis piece, thank God. You know, I'm sitting there and staring at my budget, and I'm like, there is no fucking way that I'm spending 3,500 gold for your 10 abyss crystals and whatever to do berserking on something that's like my third or fourth bis piece that could be replaced pretty soon. Who knows? Like, I'm not spending a third for one enchant, so it would have cost me like 2/3 of my gold. Obviously, it's just something that I had to rule out. And so I understand that there's always going to be a market of min-maxers and sweaters that have all the gold in the world that can afford to do this, and that's fine. But I do cock half an eyebrow when I hear people doing it, because I'm like, that's a very expensive endeavor. And, you know, where'd you get your gold, sunshine?
How much is our abyss crystals on your server, out of curiosity?
Oh, I don't know what they are now. I would have to double check. They were I don't know, a month ago they were like fucking, I don't know, 200-300 gold. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Wow.
the prices have changed, but they're like 100
Yeah.
gold on most servers these days.
Same, yeah. They're
Around
between
there.
100 and 150 from what I understand. So 300 is rough, and I mean, whatever. I mean, it's kind of off topic, but I was like, what's your guild doing with its resource management? You know, I don't expect them
the guild's been
to give you
good.
10 crystals.
The guild's been good. I
Sorry?
got a free berserking enchant once my bis did drop. The guild's been disenchanting everything now.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I mean, that's how we handle it. I get fed a bunch of stuff, but on the flip side, I literally enchant everything for free. But if some idiot comes up to me trying to get a berserking for like 4th bis for free, like, I'm not doing that. But
yeah.
for the most part, we're swimming in crystals though. I have like 45 in my bags at all times from raid, and to like give my raiders what they need. So it's definitely, and especially this late in the phase where like 80% of the gear in Nax is just going straight to the disenchant.
Very good.
Yeah.
Guys, we'll wind up on the Titan Rune dungeons. I just let everyone say everything they want to say on this topic before we move on to Ulduar. But, you know, Chris did drop an interesting little nugget in there as well when discussing the Titan Rune dungeons, saying that, you know, everything that we've just discussed about who is this for, what do the fucking sweaty players do, blah, blah, blah. Chris did hint that, we didn't hint, he just flat out fucking said it. You know, geared players, you'll maybe get your content in phase 3, where they might give us 2 new difficulties in Titan Rune dungeons, you know, one dropping Ulduar hard mode items, and the difficulty will kind of be like hard, like what we're getting with Titan Rune dungeons, and then super hard. So like, who knows how far they're prepared to push the you know, this thing, which does sound enticing. Again, did you guys pick up on that?
Yeah, and I think we didn't really touch on it in the like broader conversation, but even them just doing this, just trying it out and committing to, you know, doing it when Ulduar comes out and then maybe building upon it in future phases, like, this is a pretty huge thing, right? Like, this is pretty far from no changes. And I think that trying stuff out like this for any iteration of Classic WoW is probably good at this point. Like I used to be a big no changes guy, but nowadays it seems like, small changes here and there that, give us new content or harder content. I think it's all good. So in general, I totally agree. I think that like this is all very exciting, and no matter what, I think it's going to lead to better things.
It's funny you say that. I'll throw this out to you other guys. Like, please shout me down if you think I'm wrong or if you've seen otherwise. But now that I think on it, I have not seen one fucking voice of dissent against this. Not one comment, not one thing from someone going, yeah, fuck these new difficulties, fucking no changes, man. Why are you fucking messing with this game?
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Feedback's been overly positive. I would say one thing, they said that, yes, there would be like the beta difficulty or gamma, whatever they're going to call it. I think if they actually went maybe in the next phase, and say, okay, this is for the new players. This is the alpha difficulty, and there's beta or whatever, for more geared people. And, again, there is something. I would be totally fine with what Dura was saying about, maybe there's a mount in the end or chance for a mount or whatever. That could be a thing. So if they sort of expanded on the idea and gave something for the part of the, player base to catch up, fine. But, give something to the current content or currently geared people, that would be also great. So if that's something that they could expand on in the future, it would be perfect.
Too easy. Guys, does anyone have anything that we've missed? Any big or small points they really want to throw out there before we move on to Ulduar?
I have only one thing that I hope Grant listens to.
I'm sure he'll hear this, mate. He heard you the other day on the Red Paladin one, mate. He messaged me straight away and said he listened straight away and he fucking loved it. And I'm sure he loved everything you had to say.
There's only one technicality, and maybe this goes to Chris. I mean, the themes or affixes, whatever we want to call it. From what I gathered from the beta gameplay, they are sometimes very difficult to see. Because, for example, the one in the troll instances, it really looks like Death and Decay by Death Knights, and it's very difficult to distinguish whether it's an ability by a friendly player or something done by ground on effect by enemy player. So sort of would be nice to really have a better visual distinction between those two, so we don't need to rely on weak auras. A small technicality to fix, perhaps.
Reminds me of the Zulaman encounter where the boss steals your player's abilities and consecrations start getting dropped, and you're like, is that a good one or a bad one?
As a paladin player,
I know, right? I was playing Paladin at the time too. I'm like, no, that's me. You're good.
All I gotta say is get good, guys. I swear, if I hear the amount of times that someone dies on a Void Zone in KT or in Sarth and is like, "Oh, it looked like a Death and Decay," I'm like, "Shut the hell up."
No.
But that's the thing, right? The Void Zone in Sartarian is great to see because it's blue over red, background. The one on KT, you really need to trim your graphic settings to see it well. So again, why is it not contrast, right? So,
All right. Well, Tim's already in chat saying, Rouge, that he's definitely hearing you on the visual. On the visual feedback, and we'll be doing a visibility improvement pass for sure. So that's good to hear already. Look, guys, anyone else? Joanna, Lord Narge on these Titan Rune dungeons before we move on?
Not me.
All good?
I think I spewed a lot about it. Yeah.
Mate, I enjoyed your vomit thoroughly. Please do not worry about the verbal diarrhea on this one. All right, guys, look, we'll move on. So it was really fun to hear all that about Titan Rune Dungeons. Look, I don't know so much about Chris's Wayne's World-esque extreme close-up, but hey, he had some fucking great things to say. So well done, Chris, on that point. Now, let's move on to the other fucking culprit who's sitting here in chat, listening live and maybe inching closer in his seat as we talk about Tim's little segment about Ulduar. Now, Tim, as I've said, your beard game was on point. Agrens took the silver medal in that department. You guys both did great. I really, really enjoyed, I think I mentioned this on Twitter, the flannel shirt was fucking, oh mate, the 90s grunge, thing was loving it. Fucking loving it. Well done. The StarCraft hat, the flat brim StarCraft.
Oh, that
Oh,
was
on
awesome.
point. Fucking on point. The fashionistas are giving you a 10 out of 10, sir, from the judges. Boys, are we agreeing on this one?
Absolutely.
yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well done. All right. Now, having said that, let's go through the stuff that Tim was saying. And I should actually say, just real quick, I know I was kissing butt at the top, but I forgot one point that Tim added that I really should back him up on. Really massive, almost full credit to Agrend. And I know we really, I kiss Agrend's butt a lot on the show, but it's for a reason. He's doing a lot to bring the community, to bring the team back into the community. All of this stuff happens through a lot of the hard work that Agrend is doing behind the scenes. He is pushing and pushing and pushing the PR department and the people that make the decisions on these kinds of things to fucking hold their breath, take a deep, cannonball in the deep end, and let these guys stretch their legs a little bit more. And it's because of Agrend's, tireless efforts to try and fucking get them a bit more humanized that stuff like this is able to happen. And I've spoken with Agrend a little bit about this, and I really, really appreciate it. Keep up the good work, mate. It's been great to see. All right, now I will surgically remove my lips from Agrend's butt, and let's talk about Tim and Ulduar. Look, as I said, Tim won a lot of points for the stuff that he said during this segment. I really, really love to hear things like the fact that he has access to all of the data, and I mean all of the data. This ain't classic where whether or not it was true that we got told, oh, we've only got, up to 1.7 or whatever, from 1.7 beyond. I don't know. It's fucking whatever. They didn't have all the data in Classic supposedly, but now this time Tim has everything at his disposal to go nuts with. He's been diving through and combing through everything to try and find something that hits a really good point of difficulty when we talk about pre-nerf Ulduar. Now, I didn't run Ulduar. I don't fucking know anything about it. I did Flame Leviathan once. That's all I know. Durana didn't play Wrath in the day, but luckily we've got, Lord Narj here, who was a fiend in Ulduar back in the day. I think Rouge, you were a bit more casual back then, but we'll still be able to go through it all. Look, guys, we got the clarification on things like the plus 13 eye levels for Ulduar hard mode, which is items that are clearly going to be better than TOC normal items, plus 6 eye levels for non-hard mode in Ulduar. So there's been a little bit of a change there. Tell me, I'll throw it out to the floor. Tell me about what you thought of everything Tim said in general regarding how hard he's trying to tune this just right for us.
I mean, I'm happy to start there. Just
go nuts, man.
Given the experience there, so right off the bat, I'll say I'm very happy. I alluded to it earlier, and I kind of got ahead of myself, so I stopped. But now that we're here, once again, back in the day, you were not going to Ulduar with full bis, right? And people were not putting up as raids the DPS numbers, or most people were not putting up the DPS numbers as a raid as we're seeing now. And, something to look into is obviously there's a lot of guides out there about Ulduar. And if you go and just Google it right now and take a look, there's a lot of advice about what your raid DPS is going to need to be to meet some of the checks that are in Ulduar. Or at least have a chance, quote unquote, on beating some of the hard modes and even the normal modes. And as it stands right now, I mean, almost everyone and their mother has the raid DPS to do a lot of the hard modes right now with no Ulduar gear, which is, obviously not great, because I think it would be a huge disaster if everyone just went into Ulduar and steamrolled it in both modes. So for him to do the pre-nerf, I think, was a huge move. And for those that didn't listen to the video, basically what happened is Ulduar came out. It was very difficult. Some bosses were just straight up diabolical, even on normal mode, and even more so crazy on hard mode, with percentages of success being super low at that time. So they went and they tuned it to be kind of a lot easier for quite a long time before kind of tuning it again to make it a little bit more difficult, but never as difficult as it was to start. So from what I understand, and I'm not going to go into the numbers because he really has all the data, like you said, it sounds like they're going back to what was and I'm air quoting this right now, really hard Ulduar that originally came out. Now, the reason I think that's great news is because once again, we're all geared to the teeth. I mean, even Josh here is
Even me,
is
exactly.
Even Josh is geared to the teeth. So we're all going in there with a ton of knowledge, a ton of 15 years of strategy and advice and data, perfect gear, and presumably we're all better players than we were when we were freaking 15, right? So you know I think it's really important that they made these changes. I'm really excited to get to it on the PTR and see how it feels. But everything I said was very general, but I kept it that way on purpose. And I think those changes are great. I mean, ultimately, I'm going to have to go in there and see how it feels. But just from having listened to the talk, I'm very excited about it because it needed to be there. People are too powerful right now, like straight up. Everyone's too geared and too good for this to be really enjoyable. So I'm really happy to hear that it's the original, very hard Ulduar.
Mate, you're getting a question from the crowd. Fucking everyone's shoving you back today, Lord Narge, you poor bastard. Yandrasil is saying, mate, out of interest, like, really, do you really think that Yogg Zero will actually die that quickly just with the gear that people have now? He's saying, like, maybe if you stack a ton of warlocks.
So whoever, I respect the question, but I think I said a lot of the hard modes right now. I mean, he went and chose like the hardest fight in the history of WoW right off the bat.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think that we can just stroll on to Yogg Zero right now. Oh, by the way, in truthfulness, I never did Yogg Zero back in the day. We experimented with the lights and had a lot of fun with that fight, but I never killed Yogg Zero Light. Anyways, so he went and chose the arguably like one of the hardest fights in WoW history. So no, I don't think we could do that right now with our gear, or most people couldn't. But I'm talking, let's call it the first 4, 5, even 6 bosses. The raid DPS required is kind of what people are putting up on right now. I mean, look at how people are doing 3 Drakes Arthurian 10-man easiest. They're doing the burn strat, which is, back then almost inconceivable that you have 5, 6 DPS just going at 10k DPS. That's just madness. So obviously it's for a very short period of time, but even still, our DPS is just so high. I mean, we're all going in there with so much gear. So I'll caveat and say that there are an unsettling amount of hard modes that we would be able to do today quite easily. So I'm happy that they're changing that and they're going to make it the pre-nerf, which at the time was very difficult.
And as you sort of alluded to earlier, like I mean, my guild's doing the burn strat with me on DPS, and like if you can do it with me playing DPS, then fucking anybody can do it. So yeah, there's something's up there. But mate, Lord Narch, if I could just keep you going for a little bit longer, then we'll throw it out to the other guys.
Sure.
I think one of the more interesting parts of the conversation from Tim were when he really focused in on the work he was doing with removing the RNG factors from Ulduar. And again, I don't know anything about Ulduar, so this is kind of hard for me to talk about, but I believe he was citing the Hodir fight. I don't even know if there's a boss called Hodir.
So there's so I think once again, I actually looked a little bit through the comments. And you definitely kind of did your homework more than I did. I don't think I saw anyone upset about that. And I think in general, people don't love full RNG mechanics. Everyone nowadays, given the level of performance we're seeing, is a little bit of a parse rat, I'll say. And it really sucks when there's a huge RNG factor. So what he's talking about is there's a fight where there is a buff that is like very necessary for that fight, and a very powerful buff that comes out. And I believe back then it came out sometime between time X and time Y. Right, but the difference in that
like
time
5
of
to
10
15 seconds or something
is very big difference. Exactly. So that's like a very big difference on how you want to plan things. So I believe taking RNG out of that fight was smart. There's a couple other things that he said that I thought were really great fixes, but personally, as long as the mechanics are complex and fun and difficult, I'm happy. It's when RNG kind of takes away from preparation. I'm trying to think of a fight right now in Nax where like no matter what you do, you might get screwed, and I don't think it's fair, right? So
I just want to understand the mechanic a bit more before I kind of launch into what I want to say next. So, as you say, back in the day, it was an RNG factor of a 10-second variance of somewhere between 5 and 15 seconds that like a fire gets dropped or something. Is that right?
yeah, it's a fire that buffs you.
So you have to
Now you're
stand
like
in that
really,
fire.
you're really, you're really poking into my. I'm gonna have to like look this up now because I need to.
I just want to make sure because
get back.
I'll give you basically everyone give me a break if I'm saying sort of if I don't understand the mechanic and I'm saying the wrong thing. But the gist of what I'm about to launch into here, this is quite tangential to really the Ulduar point. But like when you say that, my ears really pricked up hearing Tim describe removing the RNG factor. And I understand that that would resonate with a lot of WoW raiders of like, yeah, we fucking hate RNG. Like you say, like, just fucking make it predictable, make it scripted. We want to know what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. But a part of my brain is like, hang on. Don't we want wild shit to happen? Don't we want to play the game and have the game push us a little bit? Like, is this just past culture speaking of like, I need this to be so tightly scripted that I know exactly where I'm going to get my 99s, blah, 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 blah. Because again, I hate to always do this, but I think of things like Final Fantasy 14 where, weak auras and DBM isn't a thing and you have to kind of watch the game and play the game and react to shit in the moment in order to down the boss. Whereas the WoW crowd is very different. They do not like that. They're like, no, we want high octane performance. We want to know everything in advance that's coming. That's why we have weak auras and DBM and blah, 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 blah. Is this that, or am I misapplying this argument?
So to a degree, but I will tell you that there are other mechanics on that fight which cause you to have to give a shit besides. So he's got a cold debuff. I mean, I guess if we're gonna get nitty gritty here, he's got a cold debuff kind of like from the Nexus where you have to move to dispel it, right? So this is obviously detrimental to casters, right? Because you have to cast, move. So you're missing GCDs, and that's a parse killer, right? Like we're thinking about the people who just want to parse here and et cetera, et cetera. Then he drops a beneficial buff, which I think is called a calming fire, toasty fire it is. And if you stand near it, you actually don't get that debuff, so you can just go hard. And you also apply a debuff on Hodier, which increases his magic damage. It stacks a bunch, I forgot how much, and it increases damage by like a lot. But on that same vein, there's another mechanic of icicles that fall from the ceiling that you still have to dodge regardless of whether you're standing near that fire or not. So it's not like you can just sit there and turret. You still have to dodge the actual mechanics that matter. The RNG of the timing didn't make the fight any harder or easier. It was just kind of annoying to have to plan with your cooldowns.
Right.
You still have to do the mechanics, and I think that's what's important. So
Right.
to calm your nerves there, the actual mechanics that are going to kill you still happen, and the timing of that fire doesn't help you avoid those mechanics at all.
Okay.
You still have to play the game.
And I appreciate like the pushback I'm getting in Twitch chat. It's totally fine. Well, I understand where you're coming from. Like if we're talking things like, something that's going to wipe the raid being based on RNG, I agree with you. Like you don't want fucking RNG dictating what happens on, such a wide scale as that. But I mean, I'm just more like I'm a dickhead. Everyone knows my attitudes towards past culture. And I'm just kind of like, if it's just a past thing and like an RNG thing pops up that might dick you that week, I don't really give a fuck. I know a lot of other people do, but like I think of encounters right now like Grobulus or Saf, where it's like, you might get the mutagen injection. You might have to move out and start DPSing for a while. You might get ice blocked or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's just one of those things. I personally shrug the shoulders and go, oh, well, fucking shit happens, whatever. Like it's a mechanic. It is RNG based, but that's me. I know I'm weird, whatever. Joranna, Rouge, anything on what we've just talked about there?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that when you talk about like RNG mechanics, I personally think that the way that the mechanics work on KT is like the right way to do RNG mechanics, right? Like to have things on somewhat of a variable timer. So like when he does the Frost Tomb, right? Like your melee have to be stacked and they have to stay stacked appropriately throughout the entire fight. Because if they get too close to one another, that Frost Tomb chains to everybody and you might lose people. so there's the RNG aspect to that is you don't know when it's going to come. You have an idea of when it's going to come, but you have to play around the notion that like it could come at sort of any time. So like play appropriately. Same thing with like mind control on KT. Like you'll kill KT sometimes, 0 mind controls will go out. But you also need to know that they can go out, and the best ways to mitigate killing those mind controlled people or having them kill you. So I don't know. Those are RNG elements that can change how smooth the fight goes. But I think that they're good because you don't necessarily know when they're going to happen, and you can plan for them. You can prep for them. You can do everything perfectly around those things, and they won't impact you that much. It's when you don't plan and prep for them that they'll surprise you and they'll cause problems.
Very, very good. Let me just inject this. Sorry, Rouge, I'll get to you in a second, mate.
Sure, no problem.
I'll just read out something that Tim said in the chat, and I'm fucking dying. And first of all, Tim, let me thank you so much. You're infinitely helping this conversation by injecting this kind of input live in the moment. But also, I am fucking dying for someone in Twitch chat to be a snarky cunt and call you out and be like, "Oh, what do you know? Fucking not realize where you work." But anyway, let me read this quote from Tim. "It's worth noting that the nerfed version of the fight just had the Toasty Fire and Storm Cloud appear with no delay. The historical version was to have a 10 to 15 second delay before those mechanics pop up. I'm honouring the historical version, but trying to eliminate the need for guilds to want to reset the fight right on the pull. Hodir is an odd duck where you have to wipe and reset if you're not going to hit the 2-minute timer. So the timing at the start of the fight is very influential." Lord Narj, does that quote speak to you a lot?
So yeah. So when I heard Dranosaur talking about the KT mechanic, I want to let him finish, but that's where I was going. So I agree with you that if you knew exactly when all mind controls were coming out, you could just have the druids and mages and everyone ready to sheep and cycle. I mean, it makes it easy, right? You just sit there and you wait for it to happen, and you fix it, and it's easy. So I agree, RNG should always be something that's instilled in the game. The difference is, in order in hard mode to get the extra loot, you had to defeat him. I think it was in a certain amount of time, or before he shattered the treasure chest that it was in. And in order to meet that timer, you needed Toasty Fire not to get fucked by another mechanic, and that's what was annoying. So if you're in a raid where you know you're not going to get the good Toasty Fire, you would have to wipe and reset because you just wasted your time, and there's nothing, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing you could do about that.
Yeah. And I'm with you, and that's the kind of RNG that I'm on board with you guys getting the fucking rid of. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I hear your argument, and I'm with you.
Sense.
Yeah. Does it make sense, the part of RNG that I'm weirdly against, where I'm like, if it's an individual just trying to get his dick out and show a 99, I'm less sympathetic.
Same, yeah, 100%. Globulus injection. Shit happens, like
yeah.
It happens, and I completely agree with you. But try again next week, bud.
Yeah. Okay, that's a fucking great start. Tim said he's hanging Christmas lights as he's listening into every word you guys say right now. He's doing his best to pay attention, but he's loving it so far. Tim, you're doing a great job. Thank you so much. You keep hanging those lights, mate. All right, guys. We're just at the top here. Rouge, I'm so sorry. We haven't heard from you for quite a while. Anything you heard just there before I move on to the next point that you want to comment on?
Absolutely. I mean, I really like that there is certain level of randomness taken out of the boss fights, or that they are tuned so that the outcome of the fight would not be determined by when do you get a certain mechanic appear, and that there is a certain window when that's going to happen. Because the last thing that I want to see is some of the I would say idiotic parsers do is, oh, we are not getting this mechanic, come out early, we are going to wipe. And now that if you are not in a boss fight for 30 seconds, you are still sated from bloodlust, right? So what they do is they enter arena so that they wipe it clean, they get new flasks, and they just go again, right? And especially Chinese guilds are so adamant about getting the perfect scenario. Back in Sunwell, on KT, on the last boss, if they didn't get the ad spawn in the melee range, they would just wipe, and go again later. So they are some part of the player base that would definitely wipe the encounter and just wait for the perfect condition. So taking that out of the equation, I think is a good thing. Now, there was a mention about Hodier. I really like the fact that we're going back to the strict timer. I think that's great. But on the other hand, I'm going to say, let's see if Tim can actually sort of do it in a way that we can have the encounter balanced around 18 or 19 DPS in a raid, so that we again do not need to see that this is all done by 3 of the healers going to DPS back, and doing it in a shit gear just in order to hit that timer. So I'm just hoping that again this is balanced well, and that PTR does a good job, right? Last thing, because I don't want to go for too long, that I really liked was the fact that not every boss will be a gatekeeper, so that there will be definitely some bosses that will be more challenging as you progress through Ulduar. And if you cannot make it in a hard mode, perhaps you can go back to that a week later. Because last thing that I would really like to see for the whole community is that some of the gatekeepers really become the guild crushers, right? So let's really hope that there can be just a few. And if people really want to see, if they can push the hardest of content, that they can really do the heroic version at some point of the phase, and be content with, actually being able to do it. So I'm really actually excited about what I heard on the call. I loved, the way Tim appeared, because I love data scientists, and I love that he had this, grunge look of the '90s, the Nirvana kind of
I think
face.
it was either that
part
or
of the call.
a kind of Stone Temple Pilots kind of look. I don't know.
Maybe. But I really have a lot of respect for people that are giving stories to data. And I think, that, and I really don't want to talk about the private service scene, but I think we are in for a treat, because we will be getting a new setting, right? A new sort of project, a setting that we have not maybe ever seen before. And so we are in for a treat in what we are about to encounter. And I really, maybe last thing to say, I really like the way Tim said we are not going to see some sort of Frankenstein type of encounters that was never in a game before. It was in a game at some point. Perhaps it was nerfed, but it was there, and it is for us to decode how to beat that encounter in the pre-nerfed state. So I really like that, and I think we are going to have a lot of fun in Ulduar.
Very well said, mate. Now, Joanna, do you mind if I throw it back to Lord Narge for a bit, mate? I'm so sorry. I want to ride him for all he's worth right now. Thank you, mate. I'll get back to you very soon. Lord Narge, sorry, man. I'm worried we're
going to get into some meta strats that I've never even heard of. All right, let's go.
No, not at all. I'll leave it rather open for you, mate. I was just going to say, like, it is one of those, it's a relatively rare opportunity right now where I don't know whether you get a kick out of it or not, but like, you're going so well on this topic, and literally the guy who's designing these fights is listening to every word you're saying right now.
No, it's amazing.
So I would sort of ask you, in knowing that, is there anything more that we can get from you on a specific fight or a specific mechanic that you remember from back in the day that you're particularly intrigued on Tim's approach to? Because as Rouge just reminded us, Tim did come out and say, look, he doesn't want to get too wild with this shit. We're not going Frankensteinian. We're not doing something that necessarily didn't exist. He wants to be as true to the past as possible, but he is somewhat picking and choosing different states and picking the ones that he likes the best. So is there a memorable fight or mechanic that you're like, I wonder what he'll do with this one?
Probably General Vezex. Just because I personally, once again, remember having like a lot of trouble with this boss. He's a fun boss, a lot of mechanics where every single person needs like personal responsibility to succeed there. But like, I mean, and Rouge mentioned it, there's no kind of mix and match. Everything that they said that they're looking at was at one point or another actually in the game. So I don't remember. I never cleared hard mode everything. I did all of normal, and then let's call it 70% of the hard modes. And I was in a guild that was very good, but not necessarily top 5 or whatever. And that's why I feel I don't recall having anything that I was upset was there. Let me put it that way. Where I was like, this is impossible. I hate this. Like, I feel like it was as hard as it should have been, and the amount that people were able to complete was what they should have been able to complete given their skill level. So I hate not to be exciting, but I don't remember there being anything where I was like, this is so stupid. Like, I hate this. Like, this should be easier. Because it was. But then again, I just enjoyed it being hard back in the day. I just enjoyed kind of doing that for like 2 hours on a bot. I mean, you just don't get that anymore. Where you really have to just. It's in retail, but it's not in classic, where you have to sit there for a couple weeks on a boss or two, and I think I might enjoy it. So no, I don't think there was anything I heard from the chat that I recall. And once again, I listened to it like 4 days ago for the second time, and or a couple days ago for the second time, and I remember getting an all nostalgia, like, oh yeah, wow, I forgot about that. Like, oh yeah, cool. But I don't remember there being anything personally that was like, oh, I really want to know what he does with this. But because that fight personally is a little near and dear to my heart, I never did hard mode Vesix, is I would like to hear what he's thinking about, and I want to know what he's looking at. And I guess this is to aim towards him. What is he looking at in the way people are performing now? And when I say people, I mean tanks versus healers versus DPS. And like Roosh said, like when people swap DPS for heals or vice versa, and like what is he looking at in terms of how he tunes those things? Because there are some guilds who have resto shamans and priests who can swap to shadow and LA or enhance and do great damage, and then there's others that don't have that. They kind of don't have that luxury, and so they need to run with 5 or 6 or whatever healers. And so unfortunately, that's a big range of raiders that are doing very different DPS numbers simply due to those little swaps, not necessarily to skill or to gear. So I kind of want to know how he's going to get around that, because like Roosh said, there's a lot of guilds out there, especially in Asia, that they get all types of crazy wacko comps just to be able to absolutely smash stuff, and then ultimately, all of us try it and kind of ruins the game. But curiosity kills us.
Fair enough. Joanna, mate, I'm so sorry. Let me throw it back to you. Let's get a bit broader now. And Joanna, I understand you're like me in that you don't really know much about Ulduar. But one thing I can ask you about is we got told, and we got it reiterated to us, that they are buffing this gear, that the eye levels are being changed. And as I said before, I believe it's plus 13 eye levels for Ulduar hard mode drops, which again they stressed is clearly better than TOC normal items, which is coming in the next phase. And then, the phase after Ulduar, I should say. And plus 6 eye levels for non-hard mode gear. There was a lot of kerfuffle about the eye level change when it was first announced a few months ago, because the numbers were different and people thought it was a bit out of whack. This is kind of the revised numbers that we've been told we're getting. Are you happy with it? You think it's fine? I'm personally, I think it's a great concept. They've very clearly said Ulduar is, one of the greatest raids, if not the greatest raid of all time in WoW's history. They want it to be a bit of a moment for Classic. They want to keep this thing as alive, and desirable for as long as possible. They don't want to extend the shelf life. They want people going to Ulduar when fucking ICC is available. And I think that they've probably gotten off to a pretty good start in doing this with this eye level adjustment. You cool with it? You on board? Are you against it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think when they first announced it, I was for it, from the standpoint that I think that what makes WoW good, and like a WoW expansion good, is when there are pieces of loot or there are reasons to incentivize you to go back and do older content. I think Vanilla does that very well. I think TBC does an okay job of it with a couple pieces of loot. But going into Wrath, everyone that I had talked to about it, they all said the same thing. Like, oh no, you just abandon the previous tier as soon as you start the next one. And that felt bad to me. So knowing that one of their reasons for adjusting the eye level gear in Ulduar was to incentivize people to come back and try the hard modes even after TOC comes out, I think that that's, from a design standpoint, great, because then not only does it get people doing older content, it also gets people trying those hard modes that maybe they couldn't get done during Ulduar, once they get some better gear, they go back and they try them again. And so they actually get to experience more content because not just to do it for doing its sake, but also for being incentivized. They're like, hey, some of the loot you get from hard modes is on par and maybe better than some of the loot you get from TOC. So I'm with that. I've always been a big fan of that. I think that that's great for the game.
Very good. Rouge, how do you feel about it?
I like it, but at the same time, I didn't like going back to Black Temple for the only thing that could drop there, and that was the glaives and nothing more in Sunwell Plateau times. So I think it's really good to have sort of a deterministic way of getting the piece of gear you want to go back to. So I think Valinir is a good way of doing that. Glaives, we're not so good about it. And again, I think whatever we have to go back to, and it's already done well, it's going to stay there. I don't think Blizzard is going to make any changes to that. But I think in this regard, Wrath is better than TBC because, and even perhaps Classic, when going back to Molten Core just every week, to see if you can get the bindings, that was just painful, man. And I think getting Valinir, or then later getting the possibility of getting Shadowmourne, that's gonna be great. And I think this is really gonna be good. And I think expanding the time, you have a reason going back to Ulduar. This is gonna be good. And I think having the long short phases sort of approach to the way things will be time wise. And I'm only assuming that I of course do not have this information, because that's up to Blizzard to decide that. But I think this is going to be nice to have a good content being there for a longer period of time, and then something that sort of a filler to be there for a shorter period of time, so that even in that future phase, you still go back to that previous content. This is going to be good.
Very good, mate. And you just reminded me, rest in peace, the 3.5 seconds that Valinir was enhanced Shaman Biss. My ears certainly pricked up at that one, and Joanna, yours might have as well.
Oh yeah, I just got a kick out of it because I know that our guild's already having troubles figuring out the priority. So to just like throw in there like, oh hey, by the way, now it's really good for enhancement shamans, I just laughed.
Can you imagine the fucking drama? Let's live in the hypothetical world where that was a thing. Tell me what the drama would have looked like over that fucking item now.
I mean, it's in any like organized guild, I feel like you have like, that's when I was in charge of a guild and helping run it, like item priority was like the hardest thing, because everybody thinks that because it's their best item, they should get priority on it. But like, that just doesn't work all the time. Not if you're trying to like min max, I guess. But yeah, that's where the drama is. So the fact that it came out and it was like, hey, look, it's way better for enhancement shamans now. I was like, oh, that's just instant drama. They just they made drama out of thin air.
Well, we've got a sweaty guild leader here, Lord Naj. What would you have done if Valinir was enhanced Shaman Biz?
There's nothing I could have done. My officers would have mutinied and thrown me overboard. So our enhanced shaman is actually our token streamer, Holder Hex, who I don't know if any of
yeah, of course I know him. Yeah,
I do know that is.
Yeah, so he's our enhanced shaman, and he would have, oh my gosh, he would have made so much you're giving me like trauma even thinking about what I'd have to deal with.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine if you guys know of him or have heard of him or have watched his stream, just imagine that guy getting told he can't take Valinir.
Oh well, rip to Valinir for enhancement shaman, rip to Holderheck. Give him our best, mates. Let's go back on track, guys. To let's see we've sort of discussed the eye levels there. Sorry, Lord Nard, did I ask you about that? Anything more you want to add to that one?
No, I mean, you guys discussed it. I mean, in my opinion, just exactly what it should have been. I'm happy with it. I think they're where they should be. So nothing else for me to say there.
Too easy. Well, mate, I'll throw you this one.
Maybe.
Yeah, go for it.
Just maybe one thing. I know it was said in the call that it's over 900 items, right, that they're going to be changing, and everything has been done right now sort of automatically, and that they will be making manual adjustments at some point. And I think, having enough time to get the community feedback is going to be good, because one thing I really worry about is that they will do it once the phase is released, and again it's going to cause drama because somebody's going to go for an item that's going to be overpowered based on the fact it got overlooked in that manual adjustment. So I really want to hope that all the manual adjustments will not be over just one item that's Valinir, but that they will really look into seeing whether the automatic changes by the eye level are really making sense, and whether maybe there is a group of items, or whether some classes getting too much ahead because of certain stat that is getting too strong because of the automatic adjustment. So I'm really hoping that they will find a good balance in that regard. So it's not just pure percentage upgrade, but that they have the time and resources to look into that more.
Very good. Hey, Lord Naj, Rouge touched on it before. I think Joanna touched on it a little bit. Tell me about what you think. And we are hitting the home stretch here, guys. I won't keep you too much longer. Tell me about what you think about the longevity or the life cycle of Ulduar and what Blizzard is aiming for here. Like Rouge touched on, it felt kind of bad going back to Black Temple for the fucking glaives in late TBC. With the buff to the eye levels, are you in any way, shape, or form enticed or excited by, it's the greatest fucking raid WoW ever did? I don't mind doing ICC, TOC, and Ulduar in 1 week, maybe.
Yeah. So depending on how long it ends up taking, right? I'm sure my position will change a little bit, but of course, sounds like we're all on the same page that running MC for Thunder Fury, running BT for the glaives. I mean, ultimately they benefited like one person, and I mean Thunder Fury a little more so because it was a main tank item, and it did really make them unstoppable threat machines. But glaives, I mean, going back there, and just for the love of whoever you were loot counseling it to, every week just getting all these people to go back DEing like 95% of all the gear just to take a look for glaives. I mean, it just feels terrible. It feels terrible. It's like completely RNG based. I mean, you could have done all that, and quite frankly, for nothing, with nothing to show for it at the end of the phase or at the end of the expansion, So, I mean, I hate that, right? So I think this is a good change because, well, for two reasons. It's gonna, one, obviously increasing the eye levels allows for longevity and makes it kind of quote unquote worth doing. But two, there are going to be people who want to stay in Ulduar to complete the hard modes that they never did or couldn't complete when it was relevant, possibly. And so it's an excuse to go back and keep trying your hand at fights that you may not have been able to complete, while also, kind of getting the gear that's still, very good and less distant, I guess, than the phase after it. Because I do agree with Tyrannosaur that kind of completely forgetting about the phase before. It's either one or the other. You either put nothing in the game at all that you would need in the last phase, so you no longer have to go back and you can just move forward and not have to think about it, or you make it still pretty relevant enough to want to run it. But the whole in between, like going for glaives and going for Thunder Fury, etc., is just it just feels so bad. You're literally going there for one person, for one thing, and it's just very annoying. But with the item level differences, it's kind of nice.
I almost think about it more because you guys brought up legendaries, right? I agree that going back for those is terrible. I'm thinking more of like in vanilla WoW, it's like, hey, like during BWL, we are obviously going to keep doing MC because there's Onslaught Girls, there's Bone Reavers, there's
yes, that's true.
That kind of stuff is more of what I'm thinking of, where it's like there are more common drops that are still better than what we're getting in the current tier,
which is great. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Like I just don't want it to be pretty much BT. You're right. In MC there was so much that you could still use.
But even then, yeah, there was also a time like during AQ40 where you would say like, hey, what do we need out of MC? Just Thunder Fury? Okay, well, we might do a binding run, we might not. And at that point, it's fine to drop it off.
Yeah.
Very good, guys. Look, before I sort of wrap up this topic, there's one more thing I want to talk about. But before I wrap this one up, guys, that's pretty much the Ulduar chat. I hope we did it justice. Is there anything anyone else wants to say? Did we miss anything? Let me know. Speak now or forever hold your silence.
I don't think that they hinted at like when it would come out.
No, there no hint, no date. I've got a pretty fucking half decent guess going. I mean, we can all throw our closest to the pin guesses out there now. I mean, I'm just thinking it's got to be either because they hinted soon after the holidays, I think. I mean, it's got to be for me fucking the US time, the 3rd or the 10th of January.
Oh, so you think right after the holidays?
I think right after the holidays, yeah. Because by that stage, only because to me, that would mean, Wrath came out on fucking September 27. The raids came out, was it 1 or 2 weeks later?
It came out on the 6th of October.
So was it 1 week later that you could do Nax? Yeah, so...
It was like a week and a half.
Oh, okay.
It's 6 weeks after Dragonflight, guys. It's quite and simple.
Yeah. So, well, hang on. Where are we? We got, if it was 6th of October was Nax, 1, 2, 3, 4. Anyway, it would be 3 months since the release of Nax. It would be about 6 weeks from the release of Dragonflight, because Dragonflight comes out this week. So 1, 2... 3, 4, 5, 6. It's exactly 6 weeks after Dragonflight if it comes out on the 3rd. 7 weeks if it comes out on the 10th. I just think that feels about right, but that's me.
I agree. I concur.
You concur, Doctor?
Really...
Very good.
I don't know why, but a part of me was hoping that it would not be that soon, but I am also I guess getting tired of the current raids. So I don't know.
That's the thing. I'm surprised to hear you say that, Joanna, because my big thing coming into this was we didn't want a repeat of Phase 1 TBC where everyone bitched about how fucking long we spent with that content. And everyone said, do not do that again with Wrath. Oh my God, Nax is going to get real old real quick. Yeah. And we're kind of almost there now.
I think, I don't know. They are, to me, night and day. I quit before the end of Phase 1 TBC because there was no big 25-man raid. We had 2 Onyxias essentially as our 25-man content, and then we had Karazhan. And so it wasn't that there wasn't the content, and then we couldn't speedrun anything, which is that's what my guild does once we get into a phase of content. We're okay, now that we've done this 10 times, now let's try to speedrun. And that's going to be how we make this more fun and exciting. And it was not a potential at all in the Phase 1 of TBC, but right now, Nax speedruns they're popping off. There's guilds doing sub 40-minute or attempting strategies that could get them sub 40-minute Nax 25s. So I think that's might be the only big reason that I'm let's keep Nax around a little bit longer, is because I want to see how far people can push that. But then on the other end, the farm raids are not as fun. It's not fun doing Nax. I don't even know how many times I've done Nax at this point since Classic came out, because I did it in Classic, I did it in Season Mastery, and now I'm doing it again. And so maybe we do need to go ahead and get done with this.
You guys, are you guys going for any achievements? Have you gotten all of them? Because that's the only thing that's the only thing to do right now.
We still need Immortal and Shocking.
Yeah, we still need Immortal in our main guild run, which is funny because
So I would say that the phase isn't over until you get Immortal, because until you get Immortal, you guys don't know how well you're going to do on hard. That's the barometer that I'm setting for both my raids. If you don't have Immortal, then you're not ready for hard mode Ulduar.
Ooh, I like it. Spicy.
I'm setting a bar, and if you die to a void zone, you get 500 gold to the guild.
I'm the guy. I die in void. I am the void zone guy. I'm a fucking idiot.
If I could tell you, I'm gonna fucking throw him under the bus. Holder dies in a little bit too many void.
Is it an enhanced shaman thing? That makes me feel better.
Enhanced shamans fucking died like
but
flies.
Can I fucking tell you why? Can I give you a really, really good? No, Joanna, don't. You got to back me up.
Please tell me why.
I'll tell you exactly why. All right. Look, I want to sit here and say, yeah, I'm a fucking shithouse player. I'm average, all that shit. And you guys know this about Enhanced Shaman. I think it's very fair to say it's a rather involved rotation, right? Yeah, it's not like the hardest thing in the world, but as far as fucking Wrath Classic standards go, it's reasonably not like difficult's not the right word. It's just it is brain intensive. Now the fucking the priority system that is put on enhanced shamans in every fucking fight, we just have to concentrate on what is up, what is coming up, what now takes priority. I'll bump that one down, I'll push this one up. Like I'm doing a mini calculator thing in my head the whole fucking fight, and it switches off that part of your brain that basically takes account of your surroundings, and you really do tunnel vision, and it is particularly bad on Sarth. It is really, really bad. And like, yeah, I'm a bad player. I died of void zones. I probably would anyway. But like, I mean, fuck, man, I know it's a healer, but I did my first Sarth on my Holy Paladin the other day, and it was a fucking breeze. Like, it made void zones. Fuck off. I know it's different for range characters, but like, it was simple. I couldn't believe how different of an experience it was. On my enhance, I am sweating balls, and I do not notice that big purple thing come up around me because I'm too busy looking at my hotbars and thinking.
Well, we have a real raid coming up, so I implore everyone listening and everyone on this call to work towards Immortal, because nothing in Nax is particularly difficult, and so that's how you know that your team kind of has its head on straight. And come Ulduar, you're gonna figure out very quickly who's a gamer and who's a turret.
Yep. I am
Can
not.
I go back
Yeah,
to
go.
the topic of the release date?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I think, if it was the same thing as sort of re-releasing the content without the changes that team is about to make, I would be like, yeah, sure. 15 weeks of Nax is way too long. Let's get Ulduar right now. But I think, given the fact that there will be, certain changes and going back and sort of trying to tune it correctly, and perhaps some of the testing will need to be done, I would definitely prefer, having thorough testing done and making sure we do not repeat the situation where we had, game-breaking bugs in TK, in TBC, and the game got released and it took like 2 or 3 weeks to get it fixed. So I would definitely prefer a later release date with good mechanics and no no significant bugs like that in the game, because especially for hard modes, that can be really disheartening to see, that you are doing everything right and then sort of you get a bug that kills it for you, right? Even now, in Nax, if you actually do the last boss, and that was actually seen in the Noda speedrun, they actually started the second phase, when you clear all the ads, well, like, except a few, but they brought the ads to KT, and KT despawned. That is like something that, especially for the speedrunning scene, is so bad, to happen. So I think I'm going, in circles now, but just make it good. And if it takes a week or two more, just do it. And I think Blizzard used to say, it's gonna come out when it's ready. So with Ulduar, just go back to your original release mantra.
Very good, very good. Hey, just before I let you guys go, I want to bring up one last mini topic. Joanna, let me throw this to you. Mate, Season of Mastery 2. It sort of comes up in conversation every now and again around the traps. What are your thoughts what are your thoughts on it at the moment? I find myself fluctuating back and forth on kind of what I want to see out of this thing, and I can't put myself down to one position. Where are you on it?
Oh man. That's like one of the things I think about probably at least once a day, every day.
As well as me, right? As well as me.
Yeah, I had such a good time in Season of Mastery 1, both with what we did with Hardcore and then just trying out all the changes that they did with it. I have two things I think that are at the top of my list for it. One is actual official Hardcore servers, which I think can be standalone off to the side, just appease our community, just set them up. Don't even think twice, right? Just leave us alone on there. The other thing I think is lean into the changes hard and do a season of balance where they actually try to make class and spec adjustments pull in stuff from TBC, pull in stuff from Wrath, try to make prop paladins and rep paladins a thing, try to make enhancement shamans and Ellie shamans more viable. Like, go nuts with it. Turn it into a sandbox, because I don't think people are necessarily interested in just doing like regular vanilla over again. I think that sentiment is growing. I think that, given some time, like, you will get people that are like, yo, just re-release what we had in 2019. But I think that these Season of Masteries, if they're doing off the wall stuff and trying a bunch of new things and just like scrambling, I guess is a way of putting it, that I think people are going to be like, oh, I have to go try this. I have to go see what these class balances are doing to the game.
Mate, I agree with you. Sorry, I was joking that you think of me once a day as well, personally, don't you?
Oh, true.
Yeah,
true.
No, mate, I'm with you. It's not going to be a popular thing to say, and I think the community would fucking go ballistic. But there is that kind of fork in the road of what do you do? Do you just roll back same old vanilla again like we did in 2019 with the world buffs, with everything? Enough time has gone by that people might want that again. Or do we go fucking chaotic and actually try and really mix this thing up more so than we did with Season of Mastery 1, just messing with some of the raid encounters? I've been thinking about it a bunch, and I think my position right now, don't get me wrong, could change, but right now, I'm with you that I would prefer the get in the fucking lab and make me a monstrosity kind of approach. Like, I want to see, a weird modern take on vanilla that we've never seen before. Now, as I said, so many people will be upset with me for saying that. I love Classic. Obviously, I started a fucking podcast and devoted half my life to this fucking show over the last few years because I do love that version of the game. But I'm not sure that right now I'm in the headspace that I am ready to do it all over again. I know some people are. I am not there. It's just a bit much, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it also, like, there's been speculation about when Season of Mastery 2 might come. And because I think they said officially, like, we're going to close Season of Mastery, the first one, in February. And most people are like, oh, that means maybe the next one will come out shortly thereafter. And they stick to like the 1 year timeline.
You cut out, Drana,
they didn't.
Drana, you cut out for the last 10 seconds. Sorry, can you just repeat what you said for the last 10 seconds?
Yeah, no worries. So if they come out with Season of Mastery 2 in around February and it lasts for about a year, which is what the first one was supposed to be, then around the time that Wrath concludes, Season of Mastery 2 would conclude. And I think that is like the greatest opportunity for them to actually do that full-on reboot of Classic, true to form, vanilla ice cream Classic WoW. Do it then, after we're through Wrath. But with this next seasonal one that might come up during Wrath, just mess with it, right? Like, just go off the walls.
It's obviously Tim's in chat saying, and I would have guessed this either way, Tim, but it's nice to hear you say it, that the team is basically saying that seasonal WoW's in their hearts and minds, and they talk about it literally every day. It's definitely not something that's on the back burner, just so that Joanna, and so that everyone knows out there, and that's not shocking news to me, but it's good to hear nonetheless. Hey, Lord Nudge, Rouge, I don't know if you guys are big Season of Mastery guys, but what do you think of everything that you just heard from Joanna?
I'm the last person to ask about this.
Okay, no worries. All good. I love the honesty. Brutally honest. I love it. Rouge, how about you? You might say the same.
Right now, I'm enjoying Wrath. And I think, once the trilogy sort of concludes for me, I'm ready to jump on the sort of reboot for me again. And if I do, then, of course, having some changes in terms of Seasons of Mastery would be great, and I would love some new things, to see. Even though I understand how difficult that may be to incorporate, right? But unlike you, Josh, I actually liked world buffs because they sort of made it. You fail once, it's sort of every run was sort of immortal, right? If you failed, you died as a raid or personal, it was sort of over. So that was kind of cool thing for me personally. I love seeing bigger number than smaller numbers, so that was fun. And of course, I understand the fact that perhaps you breezed through some content faster than intended, but that was fun for me to truly have that little, sort of Damocles sword, above you, and you could have died immediately if you fucked up or did the wrong thing. So I would love, Season of Mastering, like Season of Brutality, right? Like make us go ham with everything, get all the buffs possible, stack them, maybe 5 times you go through Dire Maul, to get, something like that. Just like, let's go brutal and let's see where that takes us. And buff the bosses, with it. So if you get the world buffs, you will, sort of have a bit of challenge still, but the numbers will be big. And I think that a lot of people would like to see big numbers.
Very good, very good. Yeah, mate, I just, I completely hear you, and there's going to be a lot of people that feel the same way as you. I'm just like, I don't know. It makes me think also more so of what's coming after Wrath, perhaps. And I know we had that survey go out there. It's just one of those things where I'm like, I do get a little bit more excited about something like a Season of Mastery 2 because, like, personally, my interest in the concept of a Cataclysm Classic wanes significantly day by day. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but what I've experienced through Wrath, and as I've said on the show, I'm fucking loving Wrath. It is a great game, but I am playing it so much less than what I used to play because I think that even though mechanically and gameplay-wise Wrath is superior to all other versions of the game, there is just something about that content of vanilla that it just has that mystique and that je ne sais quoi about it, you know what I mean, as I turn into a full worker. But yeah, sorry, I was laughing devilishly, Lord Narge. I'm so sorry, as you very, very kindly gifted a tier 1 sub to my wife. Thank you very much for that.
I have no idea how I did that. I just want to see my name be number 1 there, like it is on the DPS.
Right.
Very good. All right, guys. Look, I should let you go. This has been so much fun. I cannot thank you enough. Once again, huge shout out to Blizzard for doing this. You guys, let me talk directly to your PR department right now. For fuck's sake, guys, give the green light to more of this. You need to. I know it's scary, but you need to have a little bit of faith, and take half of that leap, and let the guys do this more and stretch some legs. It's so vitally important to the trust bridge that is built between the community and the devs, and it has broken my heart to see the communication just be thrown under the bridge over the years as WoW got so big for its britches that I completely understand why at times you can't talk to the players because a lot of us are fuckwits. We, treat you like shit, blah, blah, blah. Why would we want to talk to them? There's literally no net positive here for us. But believe me, sometimes there are in a carefully curated environment. But anyway, that's my rant. Let's get to the goodbyes. Thank you so much for all of this, guys. Tyrannosaur, mate, plug what you would love to plug. I am so happy that you joined me again. Every fucking time we talk is more than a pleasure.
Oh, thank you for having me, Josh. I always love being on here. I'm twitch.tv/Tyrannosaur, YouTube Tyrannosaur, Twitter Tyrannosaur something 24. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Very, very good. Thanks so much, Tim, for hanging out. You go get some rest, mate. I'm sure you'll let the team know that they should check this one out if they're keen. But now we'll get to Lord Narge, mate. Shout out whoever you'd like to shout out. I mean, you said it before. We should say it again. Let plug Holderheck's channel as well, like over there on Twitch.
I had to plug Holder because I threw him under the bus. Holder's the kind of person who comes into our raid and when someone else dies to a void zone, freaks out, like top of his lungs yells, and then dies to a void zone 3 seconds later. So I had to give him the plug to make up for that. But other than that, just the big hearts on Grovulus. Shout out to my whole guild. Love those guys.
Very, very good. Love having you here, mate. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah,
and that was twitch.tv/theholderheck, HOLDER. Holderhek. There, I got it.
I just copy and pasted it.
That's the one. Yeah, I got it right. Very good. Yeah, I feel sad because I'm jumping off the enhanced shaman bandwagon for phase 2. I am moving on to a resto shaman role, which I'm very, very excited about. Even though I'm getting better in raids, I'm getting better at passing. I got like 495s the other week, so people be like, oh fuck, maybe sometimes Josh can play the game, but it doesn't matter that I'm getting better. My war against past culture continues. I want to chill out in raids. I'm going resto, so I'm glad that people like Hold the Heck will continue to raise the flag of the enhanced shaman. It's a great fucking class, and more of you should play it. But anyway, Rouge, mate, thank you so much for being here, pulling double duty. You have been epic this weekend. We've done a lot of hours of this stuff. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Josh. I really appreciate that this podcast actually has spots for non-native speakers of English, and that we actually get to voice our opinions. And shout out to all I would say European players, and especially the Central European ones. Well, we are actually Eastern Europe in the minds of Western people, but it's been great to actually to come here and really have the opportunity to say what is in my heart, because just like the devs show that they are passionate about the game, so are we, the people of this amazing podcast. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Mate, it's my absolute pleasure. I mean, obviously it goes without saying your English is fucking impeccable. But, I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the European players from day one of Countdown to Classic. I don't care if you're not a native speaker of English. I've always said to people, I've had a lot of guests say, oh, mate, I don't want to come on the show. I'm not comfortable with my level of English. And I've always said to them, like, it doesn't bother me. I will work with you to get you over the line. But I do understand when people still say thanks, but no thanks. But yeah, always been cool with the Europeans coming on here. It's always been a pleasure to have you guys. I will say one last thing just before I leave. It'll take 2 seconds. Just on your comment there in Twitch chat, Walla. Look, I've had my lips surgically fucking attached to the Classic team's butt cheeks throughout this call. It might sound a little strange because obviously over the years I have been pretty fucking critical at times. I would like to think constructively critical of the Classic team. I give and take a little bit. I've been very, very, kind to them today, as they well deserved. But I should say, you bring up a great point about the ticket support that's going on, the issue that's happening at the moment, Walla. The obscene response times that players are seeing in games of 30, 40 days before they might get a response on a ticket about something. I do actually want to talk about that on the show sometime soon. And I think it was beyond a joke a month ago. It was beyond a joke 2 months ago. Again, and I hope the Classic team would understand this, it's credit where credit is due, but also I'm going to fucking smash them where they deserve it as well. And I think they understand that about this show. I will do a piece sometime in the next few weeks about the ridiculousness and high levels of unacceptability around the fucking customer support around this game. And that will have quite a bit of fire behind it, I can assure you. So while you've heard me kiss ass today, the knives that will be out in other facets of the game and in another episode of the show. So if anyone wants to talk to me about that, if you have stories of your own customer support nightmares, I will be looking for you and recruiting for that call. So please DM me on Discord and we'll have as constructive a conversation as we can about that. So yeah, look forward to that one in the future. Guys, thank you so much. That's a wrap. This one's been brilliant. I'll end the stream here. Guys, we'll go and host, where are we? Pastor Dave. We'll go throw him a bone and see what he's up to. And you guys on Discord, hang about. I'll speak to you in 2 seconds off stream. Guys, let's go raid Pastor Dave. He is a fan of the show. He's a big supporter of mine on Twitter and here on stream when he can. So let's go see what he's doing in World of Warcraft. Love you all.